Cal is back. He's older, wiser, and ready to hunt down the Empire once again. My name is Codiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and today I'm sharing everything I wish I knew sooner about Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Before we dive in, I want to reassure you that there will be no major story spoilers in this video. What we'll be focusing on are tips and tricks for new players so that you can have the best experience in Jedi Survivor possible. We're not out here looking to cheese the game or unlock some secret Master Yoda powers. We just want to set you up for success, and with that in mind, let's get to it. We're going to start with a fair number of basic combat tricks to get any would-be Jedi up to snuff. Usually we break this down into a bunch of different sections, but there's a lot of small stuff that I think we can roll up into one bigger section. First, you need to understand that of the 5 combat stances in the game, only dual wield has the ability to attack cancel. That means mid-attack you can use parry and it'll stop mid-attack and block. In theory, this does make the stance a bit more noob-friendly, but there is a trade-off. You take more damage while in this stance, and you have to be closer to enemies due to the restricted range. That being said, in every other stance, you're forced to finish your full attack before you can parry or dodge. It's also important to note that while in dual wield, you can't dodge mid-attack, only parry, so keep that in mind. Since we just mentioned dodging, I also want to point out that just like in Fallen Order, when Cal gets knocked down by an enemy attack, you can tap the dodge button and recover more quickly. This is a foundational tip, something every player absolutely needs to know, because the longer you lay on the floor, the more likely it is you'll wind up dead. Speaking of being dead, sometimes death isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you die while fighting a boss, you'll notice the next time you engage the boss, there'll be a small beacon on the ground. Unlike standard enemies, when fighting a boss, you can activate this beacon and regain full life and force. This is a change from Fallen Order when you would have to attack the boss to get some small revenge, but let's be honest, that was pretty much wasted every time since it happened on the first hit of the encounter. Now you can be smart about when to pick up the beacon, giving you an instant on-demand heal while also fully restoring your force energy. Be smart about this, don't pick it up right away. Wait for the perfect opportunity when your back's against a wall, and then make your move. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. Those words have never been more true than in Star Wars Jedi Survivor. All of the Force powers you unlock throughout the course of Fallen Order are at your disposal right from the start of the game, so you can take advantage of a handful of tips and tricks right from the jump. First is a classic, something we all most likely picked up in Fallen Order, but is worth mentioning here. Ledges are your friend, and in Survivor, they're everywhere. Don't be afraid to take the easy route and shove a few droids off a ledge. Not only does it save you from taking some potential damage, but it's also incredibly satisfying. In most cases, it's a surefire kill, but as always, realize that not every enemy can be force pushed, so just be careful about which foes you waste your force energy on. With battle droids making their triumphant return, I think it's best we enjoy them for all their quirky glory, while also understanding how to rip them apart limb from limb. There are a few tips and tricks here. The easiest is to force pull any droid in, giving you control of its body and then tossing it back at some other droids. This will cause collision damage, often an explosion, but will always be a net positive for you. You can also just force push droids into each other, but that's a bit more complicated as it requires you to line up everything. Still effective, just a bit more challenging to execute. Also, keep an eye out for roller mines and use them to your advantage. These are small, spherical droids that will track you down and explode if they reach you. Use this to your advantage and pull them using force pull. You have a few seconds, but if you stay calm, you can then propel them back out to other enemies, dealing massive AoE damage. If you're patient, you can even lead these roller mines towards a group of enemies before pushing or pulling them for an explosive finish. When you're up against those nasty B2 super battle droids, be prepared to deal with their missiles. But don't be a scrub and simply avoid them. Use force push and send that rocket flying back at their face. You'll do some serious damage and might even get a little AoE splash onto surrounding enemies. Next, let's talk about beasts. A little trick about those big orange enemies you have to fight early on in the game. They're a bit of a challenge to take down, but they do have a huge weakness. As they're preparing to do their side roll attack, you can use force push to tip them over, exposing their underside and giving you the perfect opportunity to strike. With this one tip, these rather tricky enemies become about as dangerous as a bantha. I should also just point out that Force Confuse is your friend when it comes to taking on beasts. Once you unlock the ability to confuse larger beasts, you can use it to temporarily make them an ally. They'll attack anything and everything around, including other beasts. It's a handy little tip that almost always yields results. Much like in Fallen Order, part of the fun of Jedi Survivor is crawling through every corner of each of the planets you explore. Here again, I wanted to bundle together a few simple tricks I think everyone should know. First, and easily the most important, is that meditation spots now act as fast travel points. This was a much-hyped feature coming to the game and is really such a necessity in Survivor. Throughout much of your early adventure, you'll be blocked from exploring certain parts of the world, but thanks to the new fast travel system, you can easily port back to the closest meditation spot and continue forward with your adventure. While on said adventures, you might run across these little scamps. These scavenger droids are pretty much the treasure goblins of the Star Wars universe. Approach them slowly, but as soon as they spot you, take your lightsaber and cut them down, because if they escape, you won't get any loot. For the quickest kill, try a lightsaber throw. Note that you can't use any force abilities on these enemies or they'll immediately burrow, so you need to be quick. So far, we've been able to scoop up priorite shards and data discs when killing these greedy droids. Speaking of loot, let's talk about loot chests, or caches, whatever you want to call them. They're back and randomly placed around the world. While exploring, not only should you be looking for these, but you can also listen for them as well. If a chest is nearby, specifically one that needs to be sliced by BD1, you'll start to hear repeated dinging and beeping sounds. This is a sign that something lootable is nearby. If you're the sort of player that enjoys collectibles and customization options, then hopefully this tip makes your exploration a bit easier. For you space green thumbs out there, seeds are back, and this time they're pretty easy to identify in the world. While traveling across the galaxy, look for little green fireflies around various plants. Once spotted, cut down those plants and claim the seed. I don't want to say too much more on the subject since the garden does unlock as part of some story progression, but you have the most important piece of information. I think it's also worth mentioning that shortcuts are still an essential part of Jedi Survivor, and because of the more open nature of the map design, they're even easier to miss. Don't solely rely on your fast travel system to get you around the world. You'll still be navigating a lot on foot, so make sure to keep your eyes peeled for any sort of shortcut because it's guaranteed to save you time on the back end. Survivor places a lot of emphasis on Koboh and Rambler's Reach. The team designed it as a home away from home for Cal, and while the Mantis will always have a special place in our hearts, there's something pretty special about the Rambler's Reach outpost. One thing to look out for are rumors. These are denoted on your holo map and often involve an NPC somewhere on Koboh. By exploring the rumor and completing whatever task you're confronted with, you'll often get the opportunity to invite that NPC back to the ranch, which will open up some new opportunities back in town, like secrets, activities, or even minigames. Think of these as the Jedi Survivor side quests. Do them if you want because you'll be rewarded for your troubles, but ultimately it's optional content for those players that like to explore every aspect of an RPG. Shifting gears, here's the tip that's a bit less obvious. Throughout your adventures, you can find or unlock Empire caches that reward you with a max Stim increase. I can't stress enough how huge this is, especially if you're playing on the harder difficulties or you're a player that struggles with combat. You can actually get 2 of these upgrades relatively early on in your playthrough, and I implore you all to do so as soon as possible. The first 2 opportunities are on Koboh, and while you will have to progress a little bit on the planet, it's nothing in the grand scheme of the game. The first Stim upgrade can be found at the top of this path here. The only sticking point is that there is a nasty enemy standing in your way. Now I chose to take it head on, but you might find that running past is a better option at this point because the fight can be a bit nasty. Reach the top of the rise, take the side path down to an overlook, and voila, your first Empire cache and max Stim increase. The second Stim upgrade can be found right in Rambler's Reach. Once you've unlocked Doma's outpost commodities, you can purchase a mysterious key code for 10 priorite shards. These are easy enough to find with a bit of exploration. Just keep an eye out for a small glint on the ground. Once you purchase the item, a door will open up next to Doma, and you'll have access to a new room and your second max Stim upgrade. Trust me when I say these are a game changer. We all know that BD1 has the ability to scan enemies the first time Cal defeats them. But in Jedi Survivor, this gives you a little background on the enemy, including some helpful tips to defeat said enemy, perfect for the player that's struggling with a particular foe. You'll also receive a small chunk of XP. But scanning also has another function, one that's not as obvious at the onset. Once scanned, enemies become usable units in the Holo Tactics minigame. You can unlock this minigame by saving Bima and Tuli from the Mogu on Koboh. You'll need to have unlocked your mount, which happens relatively early on in the game, and you'll use it after traveling to the Boiling Bluff meditation point. Here, you'll use your mount to get that extra jump height to grab onto this ledge and fight the Mogu. Back at Pyloon's Saloon on the second floor in this side room, you'll find the newly activated minigame. You'll unlock more opponents by interacting with specific NPCs in the world. By defeating your opponents in Holo Tactics, you'll receive small rewards, everything from priorite shards to various cosmetics. Perks are a new system in Jedi Survivor that gives you the ability to tailor Cal's kit more to your playstyle. It's a simple yet effective addition to the game, and as you might expect, not all perks are equal. One of the best perks you can invest in early is Wisdom. This is purchased from Z, the ancient Jedi robot you meet early on in your adventures. The Wisdom perk takes up all 3 perk slots, but what you get is hands down amazing. With Wisdom equipped, you gain increased experience when defeating any enemy. Given the Jedi Survivor skill tree is much more expansive than that of Fallen Order, it's a progression-minded player's dream. To purchase this from Z, you need to turn in 5 data discs that you find around the world, so keep your eyes peeled and don't forget to cut down those scavenger droids whenever possible. If there's one thing that can be a bit intimidating about Jedi Survivor, it's all of the new skill trees and options players can unlock. Here's some free advice. Invest early in survival and force before stances. You may think you'll be dual wielding all the way through the game, but later on you'll unlock Blaster and then Crossguard stance, and those might become your new favorites. But if you dump all your points in stances early, well, now you're somewhat stuck. You can respec, and the first time you do so is free, but every time after that, you'll want to reset your skill points. It'll cost 1 skill point. This is a punishing system if you're still early on in the game, so stick with the tried and true upgrades that will matter throughout your entire adventure, and only invest in stances once you're absolutely certain you know what you like. If you follow those simple guidelines, you won't feel the need to respec, wasting valuable skill points you could otherwise be using. At the endgame, this isn't as big a deal as Cal can continue to level up and gain new skill points, but early on, it can completely hamstring your progression. There's nothing better than slicing droids and turning enemies into allies. It was one of my favorite aspects of Fallen Order, and once again, we can unlock the ability for BD1 to slice into those pesky security droids. In the normal flow of the game, this is achieved pretty far along in your adventures, but with a quick tip, you can actually unlock this early. In the mountain ascent area of Koboh, you can trick a set of stormtroopers into opening a green shield wall by using Mind Trick. Inside is a terminal that will unlock Slice Security Droid, which you can now use with BD1. This will turn any damaged security droid to your side, providing a fantastic distraction during combat. Our final tip for this video is really one of those tough love tips. If you're like me, you'll get absolutely caught up in Koboh. You'll want to explore every pathway, turn over every rock. Unfortunately, early on in the game, that's going to lead to a ton of frustration. My best advice, and I know this is going to be hard to hear, is that leaving Koboh as soon as possible is within your best interest. I promise that if you spend all of your time exploring the entire planet early on, you'll be met with frustration, dead ends, and blocked pathways. Survivor, unlike Fallen Order, is designed to have Cal return to these important hub planets frequently, and with the new fast travel system, that's easily accomplished. Do yourself a favor and unlock a few key upgrades, and then return to Koboh and explore the far reaches of the planet. It'll be a much better and more enjoyable experience. So there you have it, everything I wish I knew sooner about Star Wars Jedi Survivor. As always, friends, we are a community that loves to empower each other, so if you come across a tip or trick you want to share with the Legacy community, leave us a comment down below. And of course, if you appreciate our Wish I Knew Sooner series and want more videos like this in your feed, do me a solid and hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing. My name is Codiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.